May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be mindful of thee, O Lord, my strength and my salvation. Amen. Would you please be seated? I'm excited today. This is a wonderful sermon to preach. This is a wonderful passage to read. Oh, friends, God is amongst us as we worship today. I'm just so excited I don't know where to begin. So I'm going to start by sharing a crisis that occurred in my life this week. My father is over at the Brentwood nursing home. He is recuperating from an operation, and he's been in and out of hospital, and he's not doing too well. He's been in decline. And I got a call, and Susan and I were asked to come over to the nursing home. And when we arrived at the nursing home, there was my father with all of his possessions in the little plastic baggies, seated in a wheelchair in the front lobby, wanting to go home. And he said, "George, I want to go home." And for the first time in my life, I think I said no to my father. Now, when I was a teenager, I'm sure I had little things that I didn't do what I was supposed to do. But this was the first time that I really had a clash of minds and wills. See, for me, I have a wonderful relationship with my father. I like him. He has always been there for me. He has always been somebody who supported and encouraged me. And I've agreed with everything he's essentially said in my life. The only time I have ever had a crisis was when I was about 12 or 13, and I discovered he wasn't omnipotent. But I had to say, "Dad, you can't come home." Now, it was so hard for me because the way I understood authority was that I always did what I was told. Because my father has never led me astray. My father's arguments are always cogent, and they're always ones that I also agree with too. We've been of like mind on every issue that I can ever think of. Except this week, he wanted to go home, and I had to say no. And I had to basically say, "Dad, there are other issues here. There are other authorities. We have to wait for the doctors to say that you're well enough to go home. I can't be with you 24 hours a day. My father is my mother's caregiver. He's the one that picks up her wheelchair and puts it in the car. And he is wheelchair bound himself now. How's he going to do that for my mother? He wants to do it. He wants to walk the dog. He wants to do all these things that he does every day, but he's not able today to do it." And I had to bow to authority. An authority not my father's, but that of the medical professionals. Our gospel reading today is about authority. Who do you place in positions in authority in your life? We live in a very political age. An age where politics and arguments is all we hear and see on the TV. And we sometimes wonder, where does authority lay in our lives? Sometimes I wish I were a Catholic priest. Do you know why? Because Father knows best. I can tell Lorraine what to do. Well, not Lorraine, that's not an example. I would tell Linda what to do, and she'd do it. Because Father knows best. My father knows best. He tells me what to do, and I do it. How do we as Episcopalians deal with issues of authority? And I know the joke is both and, either or, because that's the answer for all Episcopal questions. What do you believe in, this or that? Well, let me explain because that is the right answer. How do we understand authority? Because it's not just that we defer to people who are wiser or stronger or who are in authority over us. But we take the gospel commands literally. And let me explain where I'm coming from. I want you to look at this Bible passage. This comes at the end of Jesus' ministry. He's had all the good stuff happen. The people have welcomed him. He's had his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. He's healed the sick. He's raised the dead. And now, the establishment, the authority, they're mad at him. He's a threat to them. He's overturned the tables of the money changers in the temple. He has basically challenged the powers that be. And two of them have decided they're going to get him. Now, as we read this, it says, the Pharisees, accompanied by the Herodians, set out to entrap him. Now, on the surface, okay, Fred and Ethel go out and try to entrap him. But there's more to that. Josephus, the Jewish historian in the first century, said there were 24 different parties, or if you will, denominations of Jews in Israel at that time. The Bible mentions 3, maybe 4 that I'm aware of. The only party that has survived to this day that is called what we call modern Judaism are the Pharisees. The Pharisees were the purest of the pure, the strictest of the strict, the ones who put God front and center. And they were Jews first and last. In Paul's letters, Paul writes, he was a Pharisee of the Pharisees, meaning he was as strict and an observant and faithful a Jew as it could possibly be. And when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in 72 AD and scattered the Jewish people, only the Pharisees stuck together. The Sadducees, the Herodians, and the 22 or 3 other schools disappeared. Think of it in this light. In 2,000 years, somebody reads about American Christianity, and all they know is that there are 3 American groups: the Seventh-day Adventists, the Catholics, and the Baptists. And they assume the whole American religion is like that. It doesn't work. It's a broad scope, but only one survives today, the Pharisees. But the Pharisees are the purest of the pure. They are battling against the Romans, not in open warfare. That doesn't come till later, and that would be picked up by the Zealots. That's the other 4th party, the Zealots, those who take the fight against the Romans into battle. But they, if you will, are the resistance to the occupiers. They're the ones who are holding fast. Imagine it's France and it's in the 40s when the Nazis are occupying. The Germans didn't need to send Gestapo agents into every street or into every factory or into every office. The French were more than happy to collaborate. France was run by a small number of German troops and a large number of French police and bureaucrats on behalf of the Nazis. They were called the Vichy'ites. They supported the occupation. In modern parlance, or in that analogy, the Herodians are the Vichy'ites, and the Pharisees are the resistance. That's a remarkable coalition. The people who are fighting Rome and the Herodians, followers of the king Herod, who had been put on his throne by the Romans, the people who have said the future lies with Rome, get with the program, were first and foremost faithful Romans, subject to the emperor. And these 2 groups with totally opposite worldviews have one desire. We're going to tear down Jesus Christ. And so they gather together and they ask him a loaded question. They ask him, after some buttering up and appropriate flattering words, oh, you're so brave and smart, you always tell the truth. Tell us, should we pay taxes to the emperor? Now, what if he says no? He'd be a good Jew. The Pharisees would think, yes, that's the right answer. The Romans are unlawful occupiers. The Romans are our oppressors. We must fight them in all things. If he says no, the Herodians arrest him for treason. He's taken away and he's executed for being a threat to the Roman rule. What if he says, yes, pay your taxes? Well, the Herodians are happy. He's submitting to the emperor. But the Pharisees would say, this man is an apostate. He's a traitor. call the temple guards. This man is somebody who holds himself out as being a Jewish leader, has gone over to the enemy. He's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. And Jesus knows that they're seeking to entrap him. And open your little flyer and let's read what Jesus responds. Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used for the tax." They handed him a denarius. Now, a Roman denarius in that time and that age would have had on one side the profile of the Emperor Tiberius, Tiberius Caesar. And on the reverse side of the coin would be the symbol of Roman power and the words, "Tiberius, son of the deified Augustus." This coin proclaims that Tiberius is the Son of God. That's what Romans believed. The divine Caesar, divine Augustus, divine Tiberius, they were gods. And a good Roman worshipped them and treated them as gods on earth. And Tiberius is the Son of God. Well, there's somebody else in the room who's also the Son of God. And it's not Tiberius. It's Jesus. So Jesus says to them, he's got an answer for the Herodians. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. Now, render or give in the Greek implies pay back what you owe to Caesar. He's telling the Herodians, you fellas have sold out your people, your country. This gold that you're taking with Caesar's head on it, you give back to the emperor what he's given to you. You're in his pay, that's your choice. And then he has an answer for the Pharisees. And render unto God the things that are God's. The Pharisees have taken upon themselves to define what is God's. These rules, these regulations, these customs. You can't heal on the Sabbath. They're trade union rules that you're not allowed to break if you're truly divine. Are those God's? Or are you Pharisees adding stuff onto the laws to make it difficult for people to be as perfect as you? This passage has been used for 2,000 years in Christian political thinking. And there are a whole broad swath of ways the church has dealt with politics. Even within our own tradition, we have no one answer. There's one extreme, which you could say is the Church of England. Bishops of the Church of England sit in the House of Lords. They go into the House of Lords and they wear vestments like this, except they wear the black tippet instead of the colored stole. And they'll get up and they'll have debate on agricultural appropriations, on all the boring stuff that you can watch on C-SPAN that our Senate does, the House of Lords does too. And the bishops are arguing over tax policy. They're arguing over defense policy. They're offering their positions as members of the ruling establishment. Is there a difference between church and state? No. The bishops are civil servants doing the religious function of the state. To the other extreme, you have people like the Amish, who, if you will, withdraw into the wilderness, withdraw into their own communities. They don't vote, they don't pay taxes if they can get away with it. They don't serve in the army. The state is out there, but it's a different world. And their whole world and focus is on themselves and their relationship with each other as fellow believers and with God. They're not involved in politics. Where do Episcopalians come down? Of course, right down there. But from the very beginning, our church has had to deal with politics. The first two bishops of the Episcopal Church in this country were Samuel Seabury of Connecticut and William White of Pennsylvania. Now, during the American Revolution, we had Episcopalians on both sides, George Washington being the prominent one. And then you had the Loyalists, and they were almost all Episcopalians. Many of them fled to Canada after the Revolution. Not all did. And because in Episcopal services, at that time, the prayer book said, at this point, we pray for the king and his ministers. And if you were a good revolutionary, that was a little problematic. So they would substitute Congress or government or whatever. The first two bishops, Samuel Seabury and William White, both served in the Revolution. Samuel Seabury was a naval chaplain for the British Navy. He was a loyalist. William White was the chaplain of the Continental Congress in Philadelphia. He was a patriot, a revolutionary. From the very first, we had a match set. And what did we decide to do? We're not going to do politics in church, thank you. Because we've got revolutionaries and loyalists. And even in the canons of the Episcopal Church, up until the 20th century, General Convention was not allowed to talk about secular political issues. What happened in the Civil War to the Methodists? They split. We had Southern Methodists and Northern Methodists. Now they're called United Methodists. Why? Because they got back together again. We had the Baptists, Southern Baptists and Northern Baptists split. And they keep splitting. We had the Presbyterians split. There weren't many Lutherans or Catholics in the South. Who was left? The Episcopalians. What did we do? We waited for the war to end. Seriously. We had bishops on both sides of these issues who were fierce abolitionists. The Bishop of Virginia, the Bishop of Mississippi were fiercely pro-slavery. But we decided we're not going to take a position on this until after we see how the war turns out. If the South wins, then we'll have the Episcopal Church in the Confederate States of America, and we'll have the Episcopal Church in the United States of America. This was the model. And it was a model that allowed Robert E. Lee to be one of the leaders of the Diocese of Virginia after the Civil War and sit in General Convention with abolitionists from Massachusetts. Why? Because we didn't do politics in church. That policy began to change in the 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement. But it only changed slowly. Seminarians, men at that time trained for ministry in the North, started going down in their summer vacations to be part of what were called the Freedom Riders. And then some junior clergy got involved as well. At that time, the suffragan or assistant bishop of Massachusetts was a black man, and he wanted to go south and raise his solidarity with the Freedom Riders. And guess what the Bishop of Mississippi said? Let's wait till we see how this turns out. But it opened the door where clergy wearing their street clothes, meaning the little plastic collars, would participate in marches and in political events. But as the Vietnam War and the era radicalized the church, we forgot those things. And nowadays, if you are pro-life, you can go up to Washington for the pro-life march, and you will see Episcopal and Anglican bishops dressed in their ecclesiastical Eucharistic vestments marching down through the mall in Washington. You can see other clergy, Episcopal bishops, in pro-choice rallies dressed like this. You can see next time they execute somebody up in Stark, you'll see clergy dressed like this, Episcopal clergy. We've given up that non-political stance. Our House of Bishops, uniformly, every time they meet, they turn out some statement. I can remember when I started as a reporter for a long time, and I can remember writing on the fact that they had a pastoral statement on the bombing of Serbia during President Clinton's presidency. Anybody remember that one? Did anybody care? No. Every time we've reached the point where bishops can mouth off about anything and nobody pays attention. Now, in our Episcopal tradition, that's not a problem. The Catholic Church has a problem on this issue. Pope Francis recently said that capital punishment always and everywhere is wrong. It's against the Bible. It's against the whole gospel. Okay? Problem is, Pope Pius in 1953 says, it's right. You're allowed to do it. The Bible permits it. It's right everywhere when the state says so. So you have Pope A saying yes and Pope B saying no. And if you're a Catholic and you have your magisterium centered in one man, you've got a problem. But if you're an Episcopalian and your bishop goes off the deep end, that's nice, bishop, good for you. Now, why can I say that? And I'm not just being silly. Because the role of the priest and the bishop is to teach and preach and share God's love. It's not to politic. In November, you could go into the parking lot at Seven Rivers Presbyterian Church, and every car in that lot would have a Trump sticker. You could go up to the Unitarian Church in Citrus Springs. Every car in that lot had an Clinton sticker. What did we have here? We had hardly any stickers. And those that you saw were equally divided. Why is that? Because the role of the church is to reach the individual, to preach and teach the good news of Jesus Christ. And here's what we do that is so Episcopalian and so shocking. We ask you to think for yourself. Your reason, your experience, the tradition that shaped you, you make the decision, and if it is based upon good consciousness and draws upon Scripture, the priest is there to support you, even if he thinks you're a loon. My job, as I see it, is not to march in my vestments, but to stand in back of you and support you. And it doesn't matter whether I agree with you or not. Because my job is to love and to support and to provide encouragement and provide scriptural statements. I may not agree with the conclusions you reach, but Father does not know best in our church. The bishop does not tell us what we have to do. You won't ever hear me, and I hope ever hear anyone in an Episcopal church get in the pulpit and say, vote for John Smith. You're never going to get an Episcopalian voter's guide that says, here's how you should vote on these issues. Here's what they think on issues that are important to us. Because as a church, we know that people of good faith can be on both sides. Now, of course, people will raise the Nazi argument. Well, yes, there are some things that we're not going to be on both sides of. So, no Nazis, please. But do you understand where I'm coming from this? The role of the church is not to be slippery and ambiguous. The role of the church is to be steadfast in proclaiming the gospel. And our church teaches and believes in what we call the priesthood of all believers. I am not a magic man. Just because the bishop put his hands on my head 25 years ago doesn't change me into a better human being. I have a commission. I have a function. And that's to teach and preach and celebrate the sacraments. But I'm no different from any other believer. Because we believe in this scandalous thing called the priesthood of all believers. No, that doesn't mean you all can join the pension plan. What it means is that the keys of the kingdom given by Jesus to St. Peter do not reside in my pocket in this church. All those who are people of faith have access to the grace of God. I can't turn it on and turn it off. That's the difference between us and other churches. All have access to the power and grace of God personally without me standing there, or your mother, or the saints, the Virgin Mary. It's you and God. Now, how does that work out in day-to-day life? Well, it worked out for me this week. My natural, cultural, historical way of thinking is whatever Dad wants, I'm going to do. I'm not going to argue. I'm always going to do what my father says. But I had to stop and say, what is right here? What does my experience, what does my reason, how am I understanding what the good is here? I had to think for myself. And folks, I didn't want to. I wanted to just do a knee-jerk reaction and do whatever Daddy says. But there are times when we have to go to something greater. And we have to rely upon God. It's not what the doctor says, it's not what the president says, it's not what the bishop says, it's not what I say. It's what you, in your mind and in your good conscience, come to understand. Now, this is all predicated on the fact that you have a good conscience. There will be people who will use malice and say, well, hey, this is my opportunity to run with it. This sermon does not apply with people who start out with bad principles and bad foundation. It starts with people who are actively pursuing the path toward salvation in Jesus Christ. Think for yourself. Use the tools and talents and gifts that you have been given. Use the Bible. Use our tradition. Use your fellow believers. Our prayer book has an Articles of Religion that sort of says why we do what we do. And one of the things it says is why we show up on Sunday. Well, we're supposed to. But second, we are here to encourage and support one another. That is why we meet in community. That's why we just don't take off as soon as the doors open up. Our fellowship extends 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We are here for each other. So what do I want you to come take away with today? Think for yourself. Believe in the Lord. Trust in the Bible. And all will be well. Amen. Friends,